Hello. My name is Isolde Vera. And I paid for my mother's birthday party, every bottle of champagne, every centerpiece, even the dress she wore, only to be told, in front of 50 guests, that I was nothing more than my sister's shadow. I stepped into the banquet hall, the faint scent of roses clinging to the air like a memory that refused to let go. The weight of the cake box pulled at my arms, a homemade cream cheese frosted red velvet, Vera's favorite, or at least it used to be. I'd spent hours perfecting that recipe years ago, long before the silence had stretched so far between us that even birthdays felt more like obligations than celebrations. The sound of laughter hit me first, sharp and bright, echoing against the high ceilings and polished marble floors. Clinking champagne glasses, high-pitched giggles, murmurs layered beneath a jazz band nestled in the corner. The scene was almost too perfect, like something out of a lifestyle magazine. Everyone was smiling, sipping, mingling. Everyone but me. I had driven in from Austin that morning, the silence in the car pressing into me like a second skin. I didn't play music. I didn't call anyone. It was just me and the road, and the weight of a dozen questions I wasn't brave enough to answer. Why had I come? After everything? After all the dismissals, the way they'd pushed me to the edge of every photograph, every family gathering, every memory? Maybe I came out of duty. Maybe I came because part of me still clung to the fantasy that I could matter. That I could still fix what had already rotted at the roots. I placed the cake on the end of the dessert table, careful, gentle. No one noticed. No one even looked up. It sat among a tower of cupcakes dusted with edible gold and 2 store-bought cakes with sparkler candles already lit and flickering. Mine looked small beside them, understated. Homemade. Real. A piece of me. And still, invisible. I stood there for a moment, watching. Waiting. Not for gratitude, not even for a glance. Just something. Recognition. A nod. A word. But all I got was the sense that I had, once again, shown up to a party where my presence was tolerated but never welcomed. Then the lights dimmed. A hush fell over the crowd as the projector screen buzzed to life. A slideshow began, a year of Vera, someone said, maybe Zinnia. I watched as image after image glowed across the screen. There was my mother, younger, vibrant, full of life, smiling beside Zinnia at brunches, spa weekends, shopping trips in Paris. Zinnia laughing in the sun, opening gifts, twirling in designer gowns. Always Zinnia. Never me. Not once. I scanned the crowd. No one else seemed to notice the absence. They clapped after every photo like it was sacred. Some even dabbed at their eyes like this was some emotional pilgrimage. And then, just when I thought maybe they'd sneak in a single frame of me, something from childhood, a holiday, a blurry candid, there came the final image. Zinnia and Vera, arms wrapped around each other, mid-laugh. It froze there, lingered a little too long, as if the universe wanted to make sure I saw it. Felt it. A cold shiver trickled down my spine. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the edge of the cake box, the thin plastic beginning to bite into my palm. I was still. I didn't move. But inside, I was shaking. Not with sadness, but with the quiet, bitter realization that this was never about being forgotten. I had been removed. Edited out. Cut from the narrative like an unwanted scene on the cutting room floor. Vera raised her glass then, standing tall at the head of the table in a deep emerald gown that shimmered under the chandelier light. To my beautiful daughter Zinnia, she said, her voice clear and proud, who made all of this possible. You shine, baby. A chorus of applause erupted. Zinnia smiled like she'd just won an award. Maybe in her eyes, she had. I started to lift my own glass. Maybe to toast. Maybe just to be seen. But then Vera's eyes locked on mine. For a fraction of a second, they softened, then turned sharp. "You've always been such a graceful shadow, Isolde," she said, the smile on her lips curving like a blade. "Every light needs one." Laughter rippled through the room. Easy. Effortless. Like they'd rehearsed it. No one flinched. No one cringed. The joke landed. On me. I stood there, rooted to the marble floor. The room spun, but no one noticed me swaying. It was like I'd ceased to exist, like the insult hadn't just sliced through me in front of 40 people who all pretended they hadn't heard. Or worse, agreed with it. I didn't speak. What was there to say? The walls were too thick, the years of dismissal too heavy. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. That would have meant I still cared enough to fight back. All I felt now was that old, suffocating quiet. That sense of being air in a room full of stone. I turned, slowly, walked to the edge of the party as the crowd swelled around Zinnia like petals around the sun. I passed the dessert table, where the cake I made sat untouched. I almost reached out to take it back, but then I left it there. Let it be the last thing I ever gave them. The sliding glass door whispered shut behind me, sealing the noise inside. But something deeper slammed shut within me. And this time, I wasn't going to open it again. The sound of my heels clicking against the floor was the only thing I could hear as I walked into my apartment. The door shut softly behind me, and for a second, I just stood there, taking in the smell. Lavender and lemon wood polish. It used to bring me comfort, a familiar scent that made everything feel right again. But tonight, it didn't. Tonight, it felt like a weight. I closed my eyes, shaking off the exhaustion from the drive back from Houston. The events of the night, the laughter, the comments, the way they all acted as if I were invisible, kept replaying in my mind, like an old song that never ends. I set the cake box down on the kitchen counter, glancing at the untouched carrot cake inside. Funny how it was still sitting there. I had made it for my mother. It was her favorite, and I'd spent hours getting it just right. But somehow, it felt pointless now. No one had even noticed. The party was never about me, never really was. I walked barefoot to the fridge, reaching inside to grab the milk, though I wasn't really thirsty. My fingers brushed against the cake box, and I paused for a moment. Pressing the cake gently into the fridge, I couldn't help but wonder, how did I get here? I had driven for hours. I'd sacrificed everything for them, my time, my energy, my money, but all I had in return was silence. Maybe it wasn't silence. Maybe it was worse. I was invisible. A shadow. The one everyone relied on but never saw. The memory hit me like a punch to the gut, and suddenly, I wasn't in my kitchen anymore. I was back at that party. The laughter still ringing in my ears. It was Vera's birthday, and she had insisted on making a big deal about everything. She always did. Zinnia, of course, was the star of the show. My mother, standing proudly beside her, couldn't stop talking about how wonderful Zinnia was. Zinnia, the successful one. Zinnia, the one who made everything look easy. Zinnia, the perfect daughter. I had smiled and stood quietly in the background, as always. The cake I had made was placed on the dessert table, but no one even thanked me. No one even looked at me. Vera had raised her glass, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. To my beautiful daughter Zinnia, who made all of this possible. You shine, baby. The guests clapped. Zinnia smiled, her eyes sparkling, soaking in the attention. And what was I doing? I was still standing there, cake box in hand, watching as the world turned toward Zinnia. Not toward me. Never toward me. And then, as if to drive the knife deeper, Vera had turned to me and said, "You've always been such a graceful shadow, Isolde. Every light needs one." It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a playful comment. It was a statement of fact. I was the shadow. The one who didn't matter. The one who made everything work behind the scenes, only to be forgotten in the end. Laughter followed. The kind of laughter that stung, but no one could see it. I had tried to laugh, too. Smile. Make a joke. But it was all a facade. And the worst part was, I didn't know why I kept doing it. I wasn't mad. Not yet. I was numb. I was used to it. I had spent my entire life being the shadow. The apartment was quiet, and I couldn't escape the thoughts racing through my mind. It wasn't about the cake. It wasn't about the party. It was about something deeper. Something that had been eating at me for years. I had tried to ignore it, but now it was impossible. I opened the drawer in my living room. Inside was the small wooden box I had kept for years. The one that held my father's watch. The one that used to remind me of him. When he passed away, I had thought the watch would be a piece of him I could hold on to. A memory. Something to cherish. But that was before Vera had given it to Zinnia, telling her, "Your father would have wanted you to have it. It suits your style." My fingers trembled as I ran them along the edge of the box. It was empty now. And just like everything else in my life, it felt like I had never mattered. I had sat by his side during his final days. I had watched him slip away, holding his hand, never leaving his side. But apparently, none of that mattered. None of it mattered to my mother. None of it mattered to anyone. Zinnia had always been the golden child. She had always been the one to get the attention, the praise. The one who could do no wrong. And I was just the one who kept the world turning. The one who made sure everything stayed in place, even if I had to bend and break to do it. I stood there in silence, looking at the empty box. What was left for me? What was left for someone like me, who had spent her entire life in the background, doing everything for everyone else? Maybe I was never the daughter. Just the support beam they forgot to paint. I closed the drawer slowly, the sound of the wood sliding into place louder than any conversation I had ever had with my mother. It wasn't the final act of a broken heart, it was the act of someone who had finally seen the truth. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was done. I was done being the one who fixed everything. I was done being the one who was never seen. And that, in itself, felt like the most powerful thing I had ever done. I poured myself a glass of water, though I didn't drink it. Instead, I opened my email. The subject line read, "Final reminder, past due account notice." It wasn't just my emotions I had been running from. It was everything. The silence in my apartment was suffocating. I hadn't realized how loud the world had been until I stepped inside, closed the door behind me, and let the quiet settle in. It wasn't peaceful, though. It felt hollow. A void that I couldn't fill, no matter how much I tried to breathe through it. I glanced at my phone. There was a new text from Zinnia. "Hope you're okay. You know Mom didn't mean it. Don't take things so seriously like you always do." I stared at the words. They were manipulative, wrapped in a thin layer of concern, but they made my blood run cold. Don't take things seriously. As if it were that easy. As if my entire existence could be brushed off as a joke. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, my finger trembling just slightly. I wanted to reply, to unleash all the hurt that had been building up inside me for years. But I didn't. I couldn't. I wasn't that person anymore. I set the phone down face first on the table. The sound of it hitting the wood seemed to echo around the room. That's enough, I thought. They had already crossed too many lines. More texts from her buzzed in, each one more suffocating than the last. You're being sensitive. Let's not make this a thing. We love you. I clenched my jaw, the words ringing in my ears. We love you, they said, as if love could be measured by the amount of money I sent or the sacrifices I made in silence. I picked up the phone, my fingers brushing the screen. What's the point of loving someone if you don't even see them? What did their love mean if it was only reserved for the version of me that didn't question, didn't fight, didn't demand to be seen? I tossed the phone to the side, watching it slide across the table. The damage had already been done. The wound had been carved too deep. I couldn't just undo it with a few kind words or hollow apologies. The feeling of being erased, a feeling I had known all my life, now felt final. Not just in their eyes, but in my own heart. I wasn't invited to their world anymore. They had already decided that the script had been written, and I was no longer the lead. I was the background noise. The quiet, obedient shadow that held the family together while they basked in the sunlight. I wasn't angry anymore. Not like I had been in the past, when I would lash out and try to fix things. No, tonight, I was numb. I was cold. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. I froze, not expecting anyone. When I opened it, Nathan, one of my coworkers, was standing on the other side, his face full of concern. Hey, Isolde, he said softly, glancing at me with uncertainty. I heard from someone close to your family that you quit. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stared at him, my mind racing. Quit? I hadn't quit. I had just stepped back. I had been pushed aside, suffocated by a family that had never truly seen me. But I couldn't say that to him. Instead, I just shrugged, forcing a tight smile. I just needed some time, I said, my voice betraying nothing. Nathan didn't look convinced, but he nodded, giving me a polite smile before turning to leave. The door clicked shut behind him, but it wasn't just his exit that made the room feel smaller. It was the weight of his words, of the fact that someone had already spread the rumor that I wasn't capable anymore, that I had stepped back, that I was no longer the person they relied on. The next day, I went to my niece's birthday party, Zinnia's daughter, of course. I had been dreading it, but I figured it was just another occasion to keep up appearances. I couldn't hide forever, even though every part of me wanted to. The house was decorated like a mini-gallery of Zinnia's accomplishments. Perfectly staged photos of her with her followers, her smiling face displayed like a trophy. As I walked in, a distant aunt from my mother's side of the family looked me over with a smirk, then spoke loudly enough for everyone to hear. Isolde's always been the wise spinster, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Takes care of everyone else, doesn't have much time for herself. The word spinster hung in the air like an accusation. It stung, more than it should have. And the laughter that followed felt like daggers, each one sinking deeper into the hollow space where my heart used to be. I forced a smile. I always forced a smile. But my eyes? They weren't smiling. They were cold. Hollow. That night, I couldn't shake the feeling of being a ghost in my own life. I went back to my apartment, the weight of the entire evening pressing down on me. I deleted the texts from Zinnia. I printed out every financial statement, every tax return, every transfer I had made over the years. I spread them out on the table, neat and organized, as if the very act of arranging them would somehow make the pain of those years worth something. Each document was a reminder of the person I had been, the person they wanted me to be, the person they had used. I whispered to no one, to the empty room, to the ghosts of the past. You want to say I'm unstable? Let's talk about numbers. I let the paper settle in my hands. The loan notice was a slap in the face, but there was a deeper sting, the sheer betrayal of it all. $38,000. Due. And I was listed as a co-signer. I never signed anything. My signature hadn't been on a single form in years. Yet, there it was, etched in black ink like an imprint of my past life. The signature wasn't mine, not anymore. I leaned back in my chair, the room spinning slightly, as my mind tried to process what was in front of me. This wasn't just some clerical error or a misunderstanding. This was deliberate. My fingers hovered over the edges of the paper. I could feel the panic creeping in, the sharp jolt of anger threatening to break free. But no, that wasn't going to help. I had learned long ago that anger would only fuel the fire that had already burned me out. This time, I needed control. I needed answers. I opened my laptop and pulled up my tax returns. Every transaction, every financial statement, laid out neatly on the screen in front of me. I cross-referenced the dates, the loan, the transactions that had occurred over the last few years, the ones I had thought were routine transfers, helping my family stay afloat when times were tight. But they weren't routine. They were part of a much bigger game, one I had been unwittingly playing. I clicked through to the spreadsheet I had kept, my legal shield, my own little binder of facts. I opened it, page by page. Each transfer, each sum I had sent, all aligned perfectly with the dates the loan had been taken out. The money I had sent them was used, directly or indirectly, to fund Zinnia's business venture, the one she had pitched as being backed by angel investors. But no, the angel was forged. It was my money, my financial lifeline they had dipped into, all while telling me nothing. I stared at the screen. They had used me. Used me for everything I was worth and then erased me from their narrative. The cold edge of reality crept through my veins. I wasn't just a victim of bad luck or circumstance. I had been actively deceived. My family, my own flesh and blood, had seen me as a tool, a resource, a well to dip into without a second thought. And now, they were trying to cover their tracks. I felt a flicker of frustration burn behind my ribs. For a moment, I thought of calling them, shouting at them, demanding an explanation. But what good would it do? They had been manipulating me for years, and I had played along, believing it was my duty, my responsibility. Well, not anymore. I printed out every transaction, every email, every receipt I had saved over the years. I scanned them into folders labeled Binder, Legal Shield. The stacks of paper began to pile up on the table before me, each one a brick in a wall I was slowly building around myself. It wasn't about anger anymore. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about finally putting an end to the endless cycle of financial manipulation. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I just stacked the papers in front of me, methodically, each one a quiet statement of my worth, my efforts, my existence. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't a shadow. I opened a new email. The subject was simple, formal inquiry, suspected financial fraud. I attached all the documents, proof of the unauthorized loan, my name as co-signer, and the string of financial transfers that had been used to fund Zinnia's business. I hesitated for a moment, staring at the screen. My finger hovered over the send button. I could almost hear my mother's voice in my head, saying, "Don't make a fuss. Don't make waves." But that was the problem, wasn't it? I had spent my entire life avoiding waves, avoiding conflict, avoiding standing up for myself. With a slow exhale, I clicked send. The email was sent. The walls I had built were now fortified with truth. And, for the first time in years, I felt like I had some control. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. A sense of relief washed over me, but it was tempered with something else. Something I hadn't expected. Quiet resolve. There was a knock at the door. I didn't move at first, not sure if I wanted to answer it. But then the knock came again, quick, insistent. I stood up, walked to the door, and opened it. My heart didn't race. There was no pounding in my chest. I didn't need to brace myself. It was Vera. She stood there, her posture stiff, her expression more guarded than I had ever seen it. Her eyes flickered, searching mine for something. Maybe an opening. Maybe forgiveness. "Do you have $2,000? She asked, voice hesitant. "Zinnia's business is going through a rough patch." I didn't answer immediately. I just looked at her, really looked at her. The woman who had raised me, the woman who had made me feel both loved and invisible, both needed and neglected. She wasn't crying. She wasn't desperate. She wasn't asking because she truly needed it. She was asking because it was what she always did. She used people until they had nothing left to give. I knew the answer before I even opened my mouth. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "No," I said simply. "I don't." Her eyes flickered with a mix of disbelief and frustration, but she didn't press. She just nodded slowly and turned to leave. As she walked away, I felt something inside me shift. It wasn't anger. It wasn't relief. It was just the closing of a chapter. I closed the door quietly behind me. The knock at my door had come right after I sent the email, cold, calculated, and final. I hadn't expected it to be Vera, but there she was, standing on the threshold, looking smaller than I remembered. The usual fire in her eyes was dimmed, replaced with something unreadable. I didn't speak at first. I wasn't sure I wanted to. For a second, I thought about slamming the door shut, ignoring her, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I didn't need to keep running. I'd been running for too long. So, I stood there, holding the door halfway open, my arms crossed. The tension was thick between us. "Isolde," she started, her voice sounding almost foreign to me. "I need your help. Zinnia's business is collapsing. Please, $2,000 just for this month. It's the last thing, I swear. I'll pay you back, like always." I didn't blink. My stomach didn't churn. It didn't tighten up like it used to when she asked me for something. No more guilt, no more trying to hold it all together. I just stared at her, my face betraying nothing. "No," I said simply, almost coldly. Her eyes flickered, a mix of disbelief and frustration. She didn't press. She just nodded slowly, turning on her heel without another word, walking away as if the whole conversation had meant nothing. For a moment, I felt nothing. Just the sound of her footsteps echoing down the hallway. Then, slowly, it started to sink in. I wasn't just saying no. I was saying goodbye. Goodbye to the years I had spent keeping them afloat, to the role I had always played in their lives. It wasn't anger that flooded me, it was relief. I closed the door behind me, the click of the lock reverberating in the emptiness of the apartment. For the first time, it felt like my own space again. My own world. I didn't have to apologize for existing here anymore. I didn't have to hide. The next morning, I made my way to a small law office in East Austin. The rain tapped lightly on the window as I sat across from Celia Mendoza, an attorney with a calm authority I needed right now. Her office was cozy, warm wood-paneled walls, a desk scattered with files. It was a world away from the chaos I'd just left behind with my family. So, Celia began, her voice even, unhurried. Tell me about the loan and why we're here today. I sat back in the chair, feeling the weight of everything that had been building up. The betrayal, the manipulation, the years of being used. All of it was in that loan. The signature I never gave. I co-signed a loan for Zinnia and Vera, I explained, my voice controlled. At least, that's what the paperwork says. But I never signed anything. They've been using my name for years, transferring money, pulling strings. They've treated me like a safety net, but never acknowledged me. And I'm done. Celia nodded, flipping through the files I had handed over. You have grounds, she said, her voice steady. But this isn't a case for suing. It's about setting clear boundaries so they never use you again. I nodded back. Exactly. I'm not here to sue them. I'm here to make sure I never get dragged into their mess again. She smiled gently. Then let's build your firewall. I left Celia's office feeling more at peace than I had in years. For the first time, I wasn't walking away from the situation. I was walking toward it, taking charge. Back at my apartment, I sat down at the kitchen table. I opened my laptop, logged into all 3 bank accounts I had access to, and began revoking access. Every family-linked account, every shared card, I froze them all. I watched the transactions go through in real time, my mind racing as the numbers stacked up. $128,600. The total I had sent over the years. Money that I had never questioned, that I had simply given because it was expected. And none of it had been recorded. None of it had been acknowledged. It was all just part of the routine. When I finished, I printed the logs. I printed out everything. Each transfer, each payment. I scanned them into folders, labeling them carefully, binder, legal shield. I wasn't just filing papers anymore. I was building a shield around myself. I didn't call anyone. I didn't cry. I didn't feel the urge to tell anyone how I was feeling. I was done explaining myself. I was done being the one who fixed everything. I opened a new email. The subject line read, Formal Inquiry, Suspected Financial Fraud. I attached everything. Every file. Every document. Every single piece of evidence that had been buried under years of silence. I hit send. The action felt final. Like I had finally stopped running, stopped hiding. The world was going to know the truth. Just as I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the decision settle in my chest, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Vera. Isolde, I need your help. Zinnia's business is collapsing. Please, $2,000 just for this month. I stared at the screen for a long moment, not sure whether to respond. I had already made my decision. I didn't need to explain myself again. I didn't need to apologize for standing up for myself. I deleted the message. No more. I wasn't a backup plan anymore. I wasn't the one they could call when everything fell apart. And, for the first time in my life, I felt peace. A peace that had been too long in coming. The weight of the evening lingered in my chest, like a knot I couldn't untangle. After I sent the email, after I locked myself away in the quiet of my apartment, I had expected some sort of release. But it never came. Instead, there was a void, a silence that pressed against me with the same weight as the years I had spent putting up with their nonsense. The knock at the door was unexpected, but somehow, I wasn't surprised. I hadn't realized I was waiting for it, but my body seemed to know it was coming. I stood up slowly, my legs stiff from sitting too long. The rain tapped on the window, a gentle reminder of the world outside that didn't care about the storm brewing inside me. When I opened the door, I wasn't shocked to see Vera standing there. She looked the same as always, put together, her smile bright, but there was a certain wariness in her eyes that hadn't been there before. "Isolde," she said, her voice soft but full of that familiar desperation. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "About what, Vera? What more is there to say?" She winced, but I couldn't bring myself to care. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was just done. I was done with the games, the lies, the manipulations. "I know you're upset," she said, her voice faltering. "But Zinnia. Her business is going under. I don't know what to do. We just need a little help this time." I couldn't help the bitter laugh that escaped my lips. "A little help? You've been taking from me for years, Vera. What do you want now? Another loan? Another little favor?" Her face fell, and for a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered the years I had spent cleaning up her messes, paying her bills, fixing things that weren't mine to fix. "No more," I said firmly. "I'm done." Her eyes widened, and she took a step back, clearly taken aback by the finality in my tone. But I wasn't going to give in this time. Not anymore. "I'm not your safety net," I continued. "I'm not the one you call when you screw up." She opened her mouth to say something, but I shut the door before she could. I didn't need to hear any more excuses. The silence in the apartment felt different after that. It was peaceful, yes, but also full of something I couldn't quite name. It was as though a long-held weight had finally been lifted off my chest, even if it left a raw emptiness behind. I turned my attention back to the screen in front of me, the email I'd sent to my lawyer still open. I had taken the first step. Now it was time to see where it led. I sat at the kitchen table, a mug of cold tea in front of me, my fingers tapping against the surface. The list of financial statements, tax returns, and bank logs I had printed earlier still sat in neat piles on the table. I hadn't looked at them again since I'd sent everything to my lawyer. I didn't need to. I knew what was there. The truth was laid out in front of me, clear and undeniable. They had used me. They had treated me like I was nothing more than a bank, a resource. My whole life had been spent supporting them, emotionally, financially, while they carried on with their lives as though I didn't even matter. And now I was done. The notification buzzed on my phone, a quick, sharp sound that sliced through the stillness of the apartment. I picked it up without thinking, already knowing who it was. It was Vera. "Isolde, I need your help. Zinnia's business is collapsing. Please, $2,000 just for this month." I stared at the screen, my fingers hovering over the reply button. My heart didn't race. I didn't feel the familiar pull of guilt. All I felt was nothing. I deleted the message. No more. I wasn't going to be the one they called when things fell apart anymore. For the first time, I wasn't a backup plan. I wasn't a safety net. I was my own person, and I wasn't going to apologize for it. But as I set my phone down, the silence crept in again. It was different now. Less suffocating. More liberating. I opened Instagram, scrolling through the posts of people I used to know, friends I hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't know why I was still on the app, but something kept me scrolling. Then I saw it. A post from Zinnia, a picture of her on a luxury yacht, a glass of champagne in hand. The caption read, "Some people carry weight. Some carry style. We carry both." I read it over and over again, the words sticking to my mind. "You carry my debt," I whispered under my breath. I picked up my phone again, snapped a screenshot of the post, and sent it to my lawyer. "Include this as a response to financial support misrepresentation," I wrote. It wasn't just about the money. It was about everything. The years of silence. The years of being used and never seen. The years of carrying everyone else's weight while they pretended I wasn't even there. This wasn't about money. It was about taking back my life, taking back my power. I didn't delete the app this time. I scrolled for a while longer, each post, each picture, a reminder of the world I had never really been part of. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't sad. I was just tired. But I was also free. My phone buzzed. I didn't check it right away. Instead, I stared out the window, watching the sun make no apologies as it lit up everything: sidewalks, cracked pavement, trash bins, and wildflowers with equal intensity. It had no loyalty. No preferences. It just showed up. I envied that. After another sip of bitterness and breath, I finally reached for the phone and opened the notification. An email from Celia, my attorney. Subject: Update, Vera. Her message was brief, almost clinical, but it slammed through me like a wrecking ball. "Your report triggered an inquiry. Vera's credit score has dropped to 462. They've frozen her accounts. See attached." I clicked on the file. A loan application, rejected. Big red letters. Unauthorized signature under investigation. I sat still. No grin. No whispered "I told you so." What washed over me wasn't victory. It was release. Like completing an exorcism you never asked for. Not celebration, but the sudden realization that the ghosts had finally been forced out, and you could breathe. I let out a slow, full breath. For the first time in what felt like years, my chest didn't feel like it had to brace for impact. I closed the email and let the quiet return. The stillness was unfamiliar, like a new skin. Not better, just mine. By early afternoon, it had begun. LinkedIn sent a ping, one of those professional updates no one asks for but everyone secretly checks. The headline chilled me. Zinnia Vera, brand paused amid allegations of financial impropriety. Below it, a caption meant to sound diplomatic but read like a eulogy. The founder is taking a step back during this time of internal review. The comments were already rolling in, some cautious, some cold. One stood out. "Karma always collects, with interest." I clicked the article. It didn't say much. A few vague lines about potential financial misrepresentation, a mention of ongoing review, and the usual, "We wish her well," closing. But it didn't need more. The headline was enough. Investors would scatter. Sponsors would vanish. And the illusion Vera had built, of grace, of luxury, of that untouchable feminine mystique, would finally begin to crack. I stared at her profile photo embedded in the article. The photo was still flawless. Still curated. Still pretending everything was exactly as it should be. Then, as if summoned, I opened Instagram. Zinnia was live. Her face filled the screen, tears welling in expertly lined eyes, lips trembling with just the right hint of vulnerability. A masterclass in victimhood. Still stunning. Still tragic in the way the internet forgives when your lighting is good enough. "This is a coordinated attack," she said, her voice quivering. "It's already so hard to be a woman in business. But when your own blood tries to destroy you, it's devastating." She never said my name. She didn't need to. I was written in every pause, every glance at the camera. Every soft gasp that pleaded for sympathy. I watched without flinching. She was doing what she always did, rewriting reality, assigning roles, casting herself as the fallen heroine. But this time, something was different. There were no flood of hearts on the screen. No rush of comments cheering her on. Just a strange, heavy silence. The audience was there, but no one clapped. That night, the inevitable came. A text from Vera. "I hope you're proud. You've ruined us." I read it, let it sit in my palm like a dead thing. Not because it stung, but because of how expected it was. The moment consequences touched her, she reached for the one tool the family always relied on: guilt. Guilt was the leash they used. A way to pull me back, to make me question whether I had gone too far. It was never about what they did, it was always about how I responded. I typed slowly. No venom. No caps lock. I didn't ruin anything. I just stopped funding the fantasy. I hit send. No punctuation. No soft landing. Just truth. Later that evening, a notification blinked again. Another Instagram story, Zinnia's account. I opened it. It was grainy, like she didn't plan it. A candid shot of Vera, sitting at a kitchen table, her face buried in her hands, shoulders hunched in defeat. The kind of image meant to spark pity without context. The caption read, "She can't sleep. She says she lost everything. Happy now?" A dagger wrapped in a whimper. I didn't reply. I didn't repost. I didn't feel the need to explain anymore. I just took a screenshot and sent it to Celia. Subject: documentation, continued public instability. No follow-up. No analysis. No emotion. Let them perform. Let them spin their stories. I wasn't on that stage anymore. I was done chasing lies. I was building something else, quiet, steady, real. The next morning, Celia replied. Noted. Also, Vera attempted to open a new line of credit. Denied again. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I just turned my phone face down on the table. My apartment was still. My finances untouched. My voice, finally, mine. And for the first time in years, I wasn't the one collapsing under the weight of someone else's version of the truth. The sun had barely crested over the hilltops when I stepped into the country club. It was the same one where my dignity had been gutted in slow motion, Vera's birthday, the slideshow, the erased photos. Same polished floors, same too sweet floral arrangements wilting in overpriced crystal vases. But everything felt different now. This time, I wasn't walking in carrying shame. I was armored in truth. Only 3 chairs had been placed at the table by the back window, the same table where my absence had been celebrated with wine and applause. I chose the seat closest to the exit, not because I planned to flee, but because I wanted control. No one behind me. No one above me. I saw it all, every reflection in the glass, every twitch in the room. I wasn't prey anymore. I didn't check my phone. Didn't scroll through social media. There was no notification, no distraction that could drown out the moment that was coming. I had waited years for this conversation. Years of biting my tongue. Years of pretending I didn't see the manipulation dressed up as family dynamics. Today, I had nothing left to protect, except myself. Vera arrived first. Her heels clicked softly across the floor, hesitant, unsure. She looked well put together, at least on the surface. Crisp blouse, hair in place. But her face betrayed her. It was drawn and weary in a way I hadn't seen before. She looked like a woman who had run out of tricks. Zinnia came next, lagging behind like a shadow trying not to be noticed. She wore sunglasses indoors, her lips pursed in a thin line. Always the actress, always the quiet one who cried behind closed doors but played innocent in front of others. Today, she couldn't hide behind tears or shades. Not anymore. Neither greeted me. No hugs. No forced smiles. They simply sat, shoulders stiff, silence thick in the air. Vera broke first. Not by looking at me, but by turning to Zinnia and muttering, "She's not going to help us anymore. She never really cared about us." Her voice was hoarse with bitterness. Zinnia nodded but couldn't hold my gaze. Her hands fidgeted with the napkin in her lap. The guilt was there, thinly veiled, but not enough to change anything. I adjusted my posture, unfolding the linen napkin across my lap, my movements calm and deliberate. I didn't need to raise my voice to be heard. I just needed to speak. "You've never cared about me," I said, my tone even. "But I've spent over a decade cleaning up after both of you. Financially. Emotionally. I've fixed problems I didn't cause, and I've sacrificed things you don't even know about." Neither of them replied. Vera opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Zinnia looked like she wanted to say something soft, something that might excuse the years of damage. I didn't give her the chance. "I'm not your scapegoat. I'm not your wallet. And I'm not your fallback plan." I reached into my structured black tote and pulled out the white folder. Its edges were clean, corners sharp, filled with every document they never thought I'd keep. Receipts, transfer records, notarized letters, texts, emails. Every lie wrapped in paper, every theft disguised as family help. I laid the folder on the table like a final offering. The sound it made wasn't loud, but it thundered in the stillness. Vera's fingers trembled as she flipped through the first few pages. She stopped when she saw a notarized loan agreement bearing both our names, hers forged, mine real. Her cheeks flushed, a cocktail of rage and shame. "You won't do this," she said finally, her voice brittle. "You can't. You wouldn't." I leaned forward slightly. "I already have. The legal notifications were delivered this morning. This," I tapped the folder, "is just a courtesy." Zinnia pushed her sunglasses onto her head. "Are you really doing this?" she asked. "Is this about revenge? About breaking us?" I stood slowly, adjusting the lapel of my jacket. Black, fitted, commanding. No frills. No softness. No. This is about ending a cycle that's been bleeding me dry since I was old enough to understand the word obligation. I'm not breaking the family, you did that, a long time ago. I'm just refusing to keep living in the wreckage. Zinnia blinked back something, tears, maybe. But I felt no pull toward her sadness. Not anymore. Vera's expression hardened into something unreadable, as if trying to calculate what cards she had left. But this time, I had taken the deck with me. I turned and walked away. Not rushed. Not storming out. Just walking, measured, calm, in control. And they didn't follow. Not even a whisper behind me. The wind outside was colder than I expected, but it carried something I hadn't felt in a long time: clarity. For years, I had left rooms like that one feeling gutted, small, like I had done something wrong just by existing. Today, I felt none of that. Today, I had done the right thing. When I got home, the apartment was quiet. Clean. Still. A thin envelope sat on the kitchen counter, no return address but marked with a law firm's seal. I opened it with steady hands. Inside was one sentence: "We are willing to settle." No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a transaction. One final attempt to fix this the way they had always fixed things, with money. But I didn't need their money anymore. I stood by the window, watching the sunset stain the sky in orange and gold. For the first time in years, silence didn't feel like something I had to fill. It didn't suffocate. It didn't ache. It felt like peace. I thought of all the times I had kept quiet to protect them. All the nights I cried into my pillow while they smiled at parties. All the birthdays, weddings, and dinners where I was treated like a prop, or worse, a burden. And all the times I let love be an excuse for the pain. But not anymore. That chapter was over. And I had written the ending myself. The letter rested in my lap for a long minute before I moved. Not because I was shocked or even particularly emotional, but because of how quiet my body had become. I had expected some kind of reaction. A tremble in my hands, a pulse racing in my ears, maybe even tears. But there was none of that. Just stillness. A clean, unfamiliar stillness. I folded the letter along its crease, slow and precise, and slid it into the side pocket of my bag. I didn't need to reread it. I had memorized every word the first time. We are willing to settle. 5 words. That's it. 5 words that could have come like a triumph, like a white flag hoisted after a long war. But this wasn't war. Not really. And it was never about winning. It was about letting go of something that should never have been mine to hold in the first place. The wooden bench beneath me had grown warm from the midday sun. I sat in a quiet park perched above the city, a hidden patch of calm with winding footpaths, stubborn pigeons unafraid of people, and toddlers wobbling beside stroller-pushing mothers. The kind of place you go when you need to remember what stillness feels like, or in my case, to slowly relearn it. I watched the leaves flutter overhead, caught in a gentle breeze that played with the trees like fingers through hair. The light filtered through in shifting patterns, a slow rhythmic breath from the sky. I exhaled, letting my shoulders fall as if some invisible strap had been unbuckled. My phone rang once, then again. I didn't need to check the screen. I already knew the number. I answered, not out of obligation, but out of a sense of finality. Vera's voice filtered through the receiver, soft and strained. "I just want to fix this," she said. "Can we talk? Please? I know I've made mistakes. But can't we move past it? Can't we be a family again?" There was no pain in her words anymore, not for me. No sharp sting, no acidic regret twisting in my stomach. Her voice didn't paralyze me. It didn't stir guilt or hope. It just existed, suspended between us like a paper balloon in still air. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence sit, like a mirror turned toward her. Then I said the only words left to say. "No, Mom. It's too late for that. You can't rewrite the past anymore." And I hung up. Not with anger. Not with vengeance. Just with finality. A door clicking shut with no need for slamming. For years, I'd worn a skin that wasn't mine. Their expectations. Their image of what I should be. Their debts, emotional and otherwise, draped over my shoulders like weights sewn into my coat. I carried it all, quietly, out of love. Or what I thought was love. But when I finally set it down, the world didn't collapse. It didn't even flinch. It just kept going. And for the first time, I didn't flinch either. I looked out across the city. It wasn't picturesque, not in the way travel blogs frame cityscapes. But it was honest. Uneven rooftops. Crooked satellite dishes. A web of utility lines cutting across the skyline like scars. And a low hum of traffic in the distance that didn't demand anything of me. I unlocked my phone, more from habit than anything else. Zinnia had posted again, another glossy photo of herself, drenched in too much lighting and too little authenticity. She stood in front of a branded backdrop, chin tilted like she was reaching for the sky. Her caption read, "Grateful for second chances. Big things coming." I smiled. Not bitterly. Not smugly. Just a simple curve of the lips, the kind that says, "You don't live in my head anymore." I felt nothing. And that nothingness was a freedom I hadn't realized I was allowed to feel. No more apologies. No more trying to explain to people who never really listened. No more debts. Not the emotional ones that bled me dry, or the financial ones they pretended were gifts when I paid. I closed my laptop and placed it in my bag. I folded my cardigan over my arm, picked up the letter, and stood. There was no epiphany. No orchestra swelling in the background. Just me, rising from a park bench and stepping away from a version of myself I had outgrown. On the path back to the parking lot, my phone buzzed again. A message. I opened it. It was from Marlo. "You did what you needed to do. Now it's your time." A small breath left me, like the air inside had been holding its breath, too. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I drove home in silence. Not because I was sad. Because I was content. Because peace doesn't need a soundtrack. At home, I unpacked slowly. There was no rush anymore. I pulled the letter from my bag and placed it into the file marked "Closed." Not case closed, just closed. Like a door that doesn't need to be opened again. In the kitchen, I brewed a cup of tea. Not because I needed to calm down. But because I wanted to enjoy it. I stood by the window as it steeped, watching a cardinal land on the fence. It blinked once, curious, almost knowing, then disappeared into the sky. I sat at the table, the steam rising in front of me, and didn't feel the need to fix anything. Not myself. Not the past. Not anyone else. I opened my journal, not to make sense of things, but to mark the moment. I wrote one line. Peace isn't loud. It just stays. And this time, it did. Sometimes, peace doesn't come with closure or apologies. Sometimes, it simply comes when you stop handing your power to people who never earned your trust. What would you do if your own family erased you from your own story? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more true life inspired stories that cut deep and heal slow.